Go back to bedrock with the Flintstones. Tonight at 8 on Cartoon Network.
Welcome to the Screwy Ain't It podcast. I'm your host, Eddie, and with me again is my good friend, Dion.
Yes, it's nice to be here, Eddie. I am excited to talk about the Flintstones. I have a lot of thoughts to share today, and we can begin with anything you want to talk about.
All right. Well, I think a little bit I'd like to talk about is, well, obviously, the Flintstones is probably the most famous Hanna-Barbera creation, probably second to at least Tom and Jerry or something like that. And, it's probably the most, and Scooby-Doo as well.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
Because when you said the most popular, my first thought was, isn't Scooby-Doo the most popular Hanna-Barbera show?
Yeah.
Even to this day.
Yeah, you're right. Now that I think about it, kids can probably still recognize and name Scooby, but if you bring up the Flintstones, there would be ask who, and then you have to say, okay, the Fruity Pebbles.
Fruity Pebbles was a big part of my childhood,
yeah.
To be fair.
What about the vitamins?
The vitamins, I love the Flintstones vitamins. They were so good. They were so delicious.
I know.
I need more of those. I need more, but there's no reason for me to take them besides, just because they taste good. But to bring it back to the Flintstones, because I was going to say the main reason why I believe Scooby-Doo is still the most popular Hanna-Barbera show is because of Velma. You can't convince me otherwise. Velma is not the main reason why people will still go back to watch the original Scooby-Doo. Yes, it was funny. Love Shaggy. Love my stoner foodie. We all know it. You know it. It's Velma.
Yeah.
Velma. Nobody was really into Daphne. You had your few Daphne fans, but everybody loved the nerdy chick.
Yeah, especially in the movie.
Oh, the movie jump-shotted Velma into popularity. That actress, do you know?
Linda Cardellini. She was also in Freaks and Geeks. She's also the voice of Wendy in Gravity Falls. And
wow, really? Oh, yes, I remember hearing something about that. That's really cool.
Yeah. She's a good actress. Yeah. Lots of good work.
Lots of very good work.
Very pretty lady too.
Yes. But yes, let's bring it back to the Flintstones.
Yeah, the Flintstones.
Because it's not the Scooby-Doo episode yet.
All right, the Flintstones. How the Flintstones came to be is a tale as old as time. People still trying to prove that cartoons are not just for children. Mm-hmm. This is our first Hanna-Barbera show. To do a quick little run around of the history, Hanna-Barbera started off as animation directors at MGM, created Tom and Jerry, huge characters. MGM shut down the animation studio. William Hanna and Joseph Barbera both decided, let's go into business of our own, make our own studio, and they pretty much did see the future in a way where they said the next frontier for animation is television.
Yes, absolutely. I've noticed the big difference between our first episode of Looney Tunes is instead of 8-minute long segments, we switched to the 22-minute format of the Flintstones. And because of that, you can definitely feel how these episodes had to tell a different story, especially when it came to animation. They were more skit-based and telling an overarching theme of the story compared to Looney Tunes with more focus on animation because they were shorter.
Yeah.
You can definitely feel the difference when it comes to two. I don't know if that's animation style or if it's simply because of the time frame, but a lot of it's very different.
It's a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. Now, at the time, still even now, TV budget is still pretty smaller compared to a theatrical budget.
Absolutely. You have a lot more to tell over a longer period of time.
Exactly. And, well, they knew that, they weren't going to be able to make, theatrical quality animation for television. And this leads to a very big polarizing thing with Hanna-Barbera, which is the animation.
Yes.
Which the jokes have been made, how stilted the animation is, how the neckties on the animal characters are literally only there so to hide the fact that they're only animating the heads of Yogi or Top Cat and stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of still frames within the Flintstones too, especially during the early episodes. which I was giving a pass for a long time because it's the 60s. This was the beginning of a lot of big name animation, and for a lot of people with the hand drawn. However, there were so many instances where Barney, for example, Fred's best friend, his neighbor, who he's always getting into fights and disputes with, like literal color swaps of his skin tone. He would be a shade of what we call it.
Like tan?
Yeah, a normal tan shade, like beach sand, and then the next frame he'd be brown, like a complete color swap. And it's not simply because of the lighting change, because it's an animation. It's a literal color swap. Yeah. Whether they ran out of markers that day, or whatever they used for the art during that time, or there was some issue or somebody just used the wrong color.
Yeah. It's very much, the animation is very much the first thing people point to, especially like the detractors. They say like, Hanna-Barbera is a disgrace to animation and stuff like that.
I would never say that.
I would say like, look, I'm not gonna lie, the animation has always been pretty cheap. Mm-hmm. Like, even back then, people knew it. Because like, you were comparing it to like Disney movies and like Warner Brothers animation and stuff like that, you know. But they knew, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, they knew that like they had to streamline the process for television to like produce it for a weekly series and, you know, to churn it out faster. People can say whatever they want, but you say whatever you want about the animation. I do think that the art for this show is still pretty beautiful. Like the backgrounds and the character designs. I think they work well for what they're trying to do. Mm-hmm. A lot of that is thanks to Ed Benedict, who is the art director for the Flintstones. Basically, he was the one who came up with the ideas for the backgrounds, how to like design the stone houses, and like one of the most iconic things about the Flintstones, the prehistoric animal devices and stuff like that.
The dinosaurs being used as appliances, like egg beaters. What's another example? Vacuums, as like the classic mammoth vacuum. That's a really creative. The Flintstones is a very creative universe. Putting animation aside, this was very well thought out and crafted for the jokes they were creating, which is something that I can greatly appreciate about the Flintstones. If you can look past any of the animation errors, you will be met with a story that reflects the time of the 60s very well. A lot of the slang and the lingo. I was actually looking up like certain prices. This one episode where Fred he was offered to buy this bar place that him and Barney constantly frequent to. The bar owner said, I'm looking to sell it for $2,000. And Fred was saying, oh man, it's like that's so much money. And in my head, I was thinking, how much is $2,000 in today's modern time? And when I looked it up, it was $20,000 in current day. It's so interesting to see the difference of inflation from the 60s compared to now.
Yeah. Well, not only that, just prehistoric 60s and stuff like that, which adds to an extra layer of... Also, one thing that's always bugged me about the show, the animals, they explain everything, all the other devices. The TV still is an enigma. How can they get TV broadcasting in a prehistoric time? That always confuses me.
Yeah, it's more about the 60s. If you look back at it now, this is how modern kids are gonna look at anything past 2000, like before 2000s. Yeah. It's like, if you show a TikTok kid today the Flintstones, and you just tell them this is what the 60s look like, they will believe it.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
Yeah, they would.
Which would be absolutely hilarious. You know, we should probably do that. We should probably like find somebody and just hey, ask their kid, hey, have you ever heard of the Flintstones? It's like, no, never. Ah, perfect. Watch it. This is what the 60s were like.
Yeah, basically. I mean, growing up, like watching it on Cartoon Network and Boomerang, yeah, that is basically how I felt. You know, because like you can always tell that like a show is a little older watching it back then.
Absolutely.
You know, but you just took it all in anyways.
Yeah,
you know?
it was definitely fun. A lot of the comedy compared to the Looney Tunes, it did not hit as hard, but it was more about the family dynamic. It was about the nuclear family. Well, early on, it was more about the husband and wife.
Yeah, because Pebbles and Bam Bam don't come in until later
Yes. But you can definitely see where it was going. Speaking on, like, Pebbles and Bam Bam, who was some of your favorite Flintstones characters?
You know, it's funny. I equate Fred in a way. It's like he's a terrible person, like a pretty lousy husband, a terrible friend to Barney.
I wouldn't say he's a lousy husband. I just say during the 60s, he was he was a low class worker. Absolutely, he could definitely be a better person. He's more of just an asshole to his friends more than anything.
Yeah, because like it doesn't take a lot for him to get pissed off at Barney.
Oh, absolutely.
For anything. Just like the simple misunderstanding, and he'll just start wailing on him and stuff like that.
The classic just beating on the idiot friend, like, Three Stooges type humor. It didn't really hit, especially in the first episode. So the first episode goes, like, just to recall. The first episode starts off with Fred being introduced and him hanging out in his backyard trying to enjoy a peaceful Sunday on his day off. Barney, his neighbor, he's his new neighbor, and he's out here making noise, trying to build a contraption. Fred gets annoyed and goes over and just walls him in the head. And it's good old classic slapstick humor.
Yeah.
However, that is not the core of what the Flintstones is, in my opinion. That's what their comedy is based on. But what really stands out for the Flintstones for me is the story that the characters are telling.
Yeah.
In their relationship. So Barney's trying to make a flying device where you pedal it with your hands and feet and you can fly. Fred says, "You'll never be able to fly, Barney. It's a horrible idea. It's like when Barney flies, I'll eat rocks." And Barney's like, "Oh, okay, Fred. I'll just continue on working on it. I'll try to keep it quiet." And Fred's like, you better, or you're gonna get it, and I'm gonna bring back my mallet to smack you over the head. I know, wrong character. I know that's Eustace. Leave me alone. With all that said, Barney obviously succeeds, and Fred immediately starts claiming, "This was a great idea I had." It's like, "Barney, you can be the co-president, and you can listen to everything I say and start production right away." Obviously, Fred's too fat to actually take off. That's just
another product of the 60s.
Yeah.
Like we said earlier, this is very much a 60s show, and with all the stuff that comes with it too. I hate to keep coming with these disclaimers, but yeah, a lot of jokes have not aged terribly well.
I think people understand at this point that a lot of the shows we talk about, we're gonna put a disclaimer warning in the beginning anyway.
Yeah.
So if you are easily offended, or if there's something that might trigger you, we will have plenty of warnings in the beginning. Do not worry about that.
Yeah.
But speaking on that, did you ever answer? So you said Fred was your favorite character?
Yeah, I feel like Fred is like, to me, he's like a fun character to watch. Never to hang out with, but like a fun character to watch.
Yes, I would definitely agree. There's a kind of a reason why his only real friend is Barney.
Yeah.
And
they have a lot of like ancillary friends here and there, but
So, for me, when it comes to my favorite Flintstones character, it is definitely leaning towards the Wilma and Betty dynamic.
Yeah.
Which I found really interesting because I was thinking during the 60s, Wilma would definitely be more of a side character that's kind of more irrelevant to the main story, which she is, depending on the episode. But when we get to the Wilma and Betty episodes, or dynamics, they're very intelligent. They're very intelligent housewives. They're very strong. Possibly stronger than their husbands, unsure, but it's probably more just of a comedic thing. Which my first thought is to the episode which is my favorite episode of the first season of what I've seen, is the engagement ring episode.
Oh yeah.
It was really, really powerful. It was a really sweet episode where Barney buys a ring for Betty, and he has to make 400. Also, my favorite jokes of the series is Barney goes to the credit jewelers, and he buys a diamond ring because he never got one for Betty. It's so sweet. It's so beautiful. She's been hinting at it for ever since they got married, and he finally got it. He asked Fred, say, "Hey, buddy, can you hide this? I don't want Betty to find it out before Saturday." Fred, kindest thing he does, it just says, "I would love to hide it for you, buddy. There is no extra ulterior motives. There's no, oh, you got to do this for me. It's just I will do this for you as your friend." And that was really sweet of Fred. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, especially since up to that point he had been acting like a terrible person.
I mean, he still acts like a terrible person to Barney later in the series, but their friendship gets a little better.
Yeah,
it gets a little more neighborly. But that continues where Fred's trying so hard to hide this. First he has it in the flour, then we get some more shenanigans where Wilma uses the flour to make a cake. She's saying, "Fred, are you psychotic? What is going on? You're out here reaching the king. I tell you something, you don't listen. I'm kicking you out. Leave." The cake gets thrown out because Fred just can't listen. She says, "I'll never make you a cake again." And he finally retrieves the ring and hides it in a better place, a bowling ball. Surprise, surprise! Wilma finds it in the bowling ball, and she thinks it's for her. Like, "Oh, Fred, you're so wonderful!" It's like, "Oh, well, what do you mean?" "Oh, I found it. I've been hinting, and you finally got me a ring. You're the best husband ever." And Fred is unable to tell her, and he tells Barney, which was I was really proud. I was really happy to see that Fred didn't try to hide it. He tried to "Hey, Barney, what if I gotta keep the ring? I accidentally gave it to Wilma." And he explains it to Barney, and Barney's a really nice guy. He ends up saying, "Hey, we just go down, buy you a ring." They go down to the credit bureaus. "Oh, Fred, it's like Fred J. Flintstone? Okay, let me check your credit." Uh-huh. "He bought what?" "Oh, okay. Get the hell out of here!" Which was hilarious. Yeah. But my favorite joke of this entire series is at the credit jewelers. When we first walk in with Fred and Barney, we see another man there. Who just finished paying off a toaster.
Oh, yeah.
He just finished paying off a toaster, and he asked the jeweler, "Hey, can I have my collateral back now?" The jeweler says, "Of course, sir. Like, 1 second. Yes, he just made his final payment. You can release the collateral." Both of his kids walk out and say, "Oh, Daddy, can we come home now?" "Ah, yes, kids. And, your mother will be so happy to see you." And I was dying because it's too true. Oh, my God, it's too true. But those are definitely the best moments where Flintstone shines.
We're just out of nowhere, a absurd or dark joke like that,
I wouldn't even really say it's a dark joke. It's just a hilarious product that is relevant till today. If they could take your kids as collateral, absolutely, it's like credit bureaus would.
Yeah.
So yes, to just wrap up quickly what that episode kind of ended. So they had to get the money to pay off the ring for $500. They enter Barney into fighting a champ. The wives find out about it through word of mouth from another person. And Barney, he's a small guy. The champ is this Goliath of a man. It's like, he's big, he's slow, he's not very smart. And the wives pay the $500 they've been storing up to give to the bouncer and say, "Hey, can you just let him hang out in the ring for the 3 minutes so you can keep your $500 and you'll just be giving him our money. We're doing this for love." "Oh yes, of course, for love." Obviously, he doubles cross the wives. Yeah. Barney gets knocked out in a single punch. They both leave. It's all sad because Fred and Barney didn't make any money, but the wives are pissed. They are upset. And they said, "Oh, you're going to scam us." So Wilma one-shots the Goliath of a man with a single punch, sends him flying across the room, and Betty captures the little guy, grabs the money out of it, like, "Oh, Wilma, I got the money." It's like, "Oh, Betty, look, I got $500 too." They're like, "Oh, but we need to make sure our husbands feel good. So, hey, little man, you going to help us?" "Oh, yeah, of course, because, if Wilma can one-shot this Goliath of a man who's 3 times her size, then what this little pipsqueak of a manager gonna do?" So the episode ends with the manager coming over, giving them money. They both buy their wives a ring because normally in shows like this, the guys would have spent it on something stupid, and that would have been the last joke of the episode, and kind of move on from there. But no, they bought the rings, and they gave them to their wives, and it was actually happy. It was really sweet. Everyone was happy, and just showing that the wives are fantastic support in their own characters.
Yeah,
and that's why I think Wilma and Betty are my favorite. Fred and Barney, they're funny. They're like the main, but it's Wilma and Betty that really carries the show.
Yeah, and they have such a strong friendship too. They're so supportive of each other. Even like in episodes where Fred and Barney are in a stupid fight or whatever, they'll always like sneak over just to talk and stuff like that. Which I think is really sweet. And like I said, this is a very early season because like again, there's no Pebbles and Bam Bam. Dino's barely in it too.
Yes, I noticed that in the first few episodes. We see Dino in the outro, but we don't actually see it. We see him one time, I think, in the 4th episode.
Oh, and
very briefly.
And one episode, the weirdest episode that like is later in the season, which I think is sort of like a weird out of order episode because it's kind of like his introductory episode where like he talks. He's like this animal where like Fred and Barney are hunting him and stuff like that. And then he makes a deal with Fred and goes like, please don't hurt me. He has a British accent and everything. He goes like, please don't hurt me. If you don't hurt me, I'll come to your house and become your humble butler or whatever and stuff like that.
So Dino's secret origin story is that he's a butlered British dinosaur?
Basically. But then like every other episode after, he's just, back to his old...
He's just a regular dog.
Yeah, just a regular...
Or dinosaur or whatever you want to call it. He's a dog dinosaur.
I remember in a bunch of old Cartoon Network commercials too, whenever they'd have like the dog characters all together, Dino would always be there.
Yeah, so Cartoon Network even acknowledges that Dino's just a dog of the group. But I want the story where Dino's a butler, a British butler dinosaur that brings Fred steak sandwiches. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. And then it was retcon.
Man, why they gotta retcon always the best stuff? And, maybe it was a dream or something. Who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe Fred with his 50th concussion of the series.
There's a later episode. I remember the really weird later episode after Pebbles and Bam Bam come in where, like, Fred has this weird dream where, like, he finds out Pebbles and Bam can sing, like, in, like, a 60s, like, band or whatever, like
I believe it.
Yeah, like, they're... And then, like, he has this weird dream where, like, it turns into a nightmare because Pebbles and Bam Bam are away so long, and so are Wilma and Betty because, like, they're taking care of them and stuff like that. So it's actually kind of sweet how, like, he has a dream about how much he misses his wife and kid. And, like, it ends with him, his dream ends with him and Barney kidnapping Pebbles and Bam Bam and running from the police and stuff like that right before he wakes up and realizes it was a dream.
It was just all a dream. Which I'm glad we don't get too much of that, especially in the early season from what I've seen. Fred,
it's very grounded.
It is a very grounded story. I think they just wanted to tell a commentary on the current life, make it entertaining for the people at that time, because this is one of the few versions of entertainment they have because it's more of an adult comedy than it is a children's cartoon.
Yeah.
Most of the jokes... kids won't understand. The only thing they'll really understand is, haha, funny caveman hits other funny cavemen.
Yeah.
Besides that, the jokes are for the adults. Every time they talk, anything they talk about is going to be some type of about credit, buying a business, golfing. All these niche things are things that were more prevalent during the 60s.
And like I said, this was technically, in a way, the first adult animated cartoon, because like you said, all these topics are like sitcoms, situations meant for adults and stuff like that. And like I said, they wanted to make a show, instead of like Saturday morning cartoons like Huckleberry Hound and Yogi Bear, they wanted to branch out and try to make a show that was like not strictly for adults, but like mainly for adults.
It's a family
show. But like mom and dad are mainly going to be the ones to get the jokes for this show.
Yeah, mom and dad will get the jokes that are being told, but the kids will still be entertained by the pretty colors and the funny movements and expressions of the characters. Even if the animation, as we've already said, is pretty low in quality, the episodes themselves still have plenty of high movement, high energy, funny voices is a reoccurring thing of the Flintstones, and I think just the Hanna-Barbera style of comedy.
Do you want to talk about Barney's early voice?
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. So, Barney's early voice. I remember Barney's voice pretty distinctly growing up. I don't know who this is.
It's Mel Blanc.
It's
bringing it back to last week or last time we were on. Mel Blanc, the voice of practically all the Looney Tunes characters, is also the voice of Barney.
Early Barney is so different from what I remember. His early voice has grown on me more, but what I remember hearing growing up, which is obviously from the later seasons, the second and third one, which I don't. Is it a different voice actor at that time?
No, it's still him.
It's still the same voice actor. He just changes how he talks.
Yeah. What happened was I guess I should bring up also the Flintstones is basically caveman honeymooners.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically the exact same thing. The same character dynamics. Fred basically looks like I forget his name, but basically yeah. And originally, when Mel Blanc started the show, he said that I'm not gonna try to impersonate Art Carney's voice. I just remembered his name, but not Jackie Gleason. Anyway, I'm not gonna impersonate Art Carney's voice. I'm gonna make Barney my own voice. But it's basically people say it's like a mix of Bugs Bunny and his actual voice and stuff like that. You can kind of hear it in some scenes.
You can definitely hear the difference in style of how he talks, in between episodes. They're still trying to figure out, how does Barney talk? How does Barney sound exactly? Is he going to just be the slow neighbor who has really good ideas here and there? Or is he going to be the goofy smart ass of Bugs Bunny? Because don't get me wrong, even though Fred's an ass, Barney still comes in with his own little haymakers here and there.
Yeah.
The constant fat jokes to Fred, which they are funny from time to time. Barney's a pushover, but he's not just a pushover. He swings back here and there. He can't fight back, but he can swing back.
Oh, he can. Yeah, and then from what I tell, I think he got in a car crash, his voice actor, or I think it might have been even a coma too. And I think immediately after, he couldn't do the regular old voice or whatever, so he said, all right, fine, I'll do the Art Carney voice. Oh, gee, Fred, I don't know about this. It's a bit of a debate because some people say, no, they just told him to change it back or something. It's a weird
It's a weird time for Barney. His early voice was different, especially for people who probably grew up on the later seasons. Because most likely, most people watched the second and third seasons. Because that's what was airing most on Cartoon Network. Yeah. Especially in terms of a slightly higher quality of animation, they kind of found their groove, at least from what I've seen. Some clips. Yeah. It was definitely it was interesting. I really enjoyed some episodes. However, the animation shift, it's very difficult to get through a lot of times.
I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna argue there, because even back then, people were like, "This isn't up to quality," you know? And yeah, it's always been
compared to stuff from the 30s too, or the 40s with the Looney Tunes.
Yeah, and Disney. Yeah, there was still Disney around too. It's I remember even hearing a Disney animator when asked about Hanna-Barbera, he said "Well, I don't worry about them because I don't even consider them competition and stuff like that."
Which is considered valid. That is valid. Especially since they were doing two completely different mediums. Yeah. Which is why I give Flintstones a bit of slack, because they were doing 20-minute segments on a. I'm not sure if they were doing it on a weekly basis, because I know it ended within, was it 3 or 6 years? The Flintstones aired.
6 years. Okay. 6 seasons from 1960 to 1966. Okay, which is a pretty good run.
It is a very good run. On Max, it showed me from 1960 to 63. Yeah. And with only the first 3 seasons. Yeah. Which is a little surprising, but then I looked it up later, and I just wasn't exactly sure. I was going to go off of you're the experts when the exact timeline. Online it said 1966 is around the time they wrapped up. Yeah. Which is,
and then, but even though the show ended, they still kept it alive. Because, do you also remember the later shows, with Pebbles and Bam Bam and stuff like that?
I remember they did a Pebbles and Bam Bam spinoff where they were older.
Yeah, they were teenagers. Mm-hmm.
I was not interested as a child. To be fair, I enjoyed the Fruity Pebbles a little bit more than I enjoyed the actual Flintstones show growing up. So that's probably why, like, Pebbles and Bam Bam were cute, like, as kids. I just was never really interested in a 16-year-old Pebbles and Bam Bam story. It just never really seemed to interest me, which it's funny because I probably enjoy it more now than I would have as a kid.
Yeah. And then, like, yeah, it's like, it's their longest running franchise. Like, they kept it alive. There was a show every few years just to, like, keep the Flintstones name alive. And I remember in, like, the 90s, the 80s and 90s, they had, like, a bunch of TV movies, like the one where they meet the Jetsons.
I remember that. That was a very famous crossover. The Jetsons and the Flintstones. Caveman meets the men of the future, the people of the future.
Yeah. You know, and then there was the other ones where it's like Pebbles and Bam Bam got married and had kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, also the Christmas Carol one, another enigma. Why are cavemen celebrating a holiday named after Jesus Christ, who's born, like, way after and stuff like that?
I don't know, Eddie. Why is there a TV that can actually get a signal? Like, there's a lot of questions here. Why is there an actual airport in caveman times?
Why are there dinosaurs at the same time as humans?
Yeah, it's like there's a million questions we can be asking here, Eddie. But at the end of the day, Fruity Pebbles is still delicious. I'm not questioning why they're delicious. I just know they are.
That's where we're just going to land back on every time.
Yes, we're going to land on Fruity Pebbles. Whenever there's a question about why did this happen in Flintstones, we're just going to say Fruity Pebbles.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Fruity Pebbles. I know what you're going to say.
Speaking of Fruity Pebbles, did you prefer Fruity Pebbles or Cocoa Pebbles?
Oh, Fruity Pebbles, absolutely. Okay. Chocolate milk is delicious. However, I wasn't constantly drinking my milk after I ate my cereal. Mm-hmm. I preferred the taste of I like variety. Mm-hmm. You know, having chocolate all the time, especially for breakfast, it was just kind of weird to me. Especially you can't have any dessert until after you eat all your food. In the morning, just made no sense to me.
Yeah, well, American breakfast makes no sense when you think about it.
Which is fair when you actually look at other countries, like how they like what they eat. But then at the same time, you see some of the other stuff they eat. It's just like beans and toast for breakfast. I'm not insulting you, British viewers. I'm simply just stating beans and toast is a little strange to us, or avocado and toast. But to be fair, toast is great. Having different types of spread, it's good.
Maybe not sure where beans go in, but okay.
Yeah. That sounds more like a sandwich, you know? It's like than an actual breakfast thing.
Yeah. Actually, another funny thing. Like I said, appealing more to adults, including its first sponsor. Do you remember this?
Was it Cactus Cooler?
Oh, no. You mean in the show. I'm talking about the show's actual sponsor. Did you ever see the Winston cigarette commercials with them?
No, I did not. Because I remember the first product placement when I watched the first season was them doing a Cactus Cooler cameo, but they didn't directly call it. It was like Cooler Cat. It was some abridged version of Cactus Cooler.
Yeah.
And it was funny. It's like, Wilma, where is the last Cactus Cooler? Yeah. It's like, Fred, I didn't drink it. Oh, it's like, Fred's getting more and more irritated. Like, I know it's somewhere. What happened to it? Oh, it's like, I think Barney took it. And that starts the fight of that episode.
Yeah.
But it was like the blatant product placement was. It was like, you don't really see that as much anymore, thankfully.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need another Michael Bay Transformers with a BMW every single shot, or some RC Cola ad with their 1 billion advertisers directly in the movie saying, maybe I should go buy a car.
If you could afford it.
And then
especially in 2009, too.
Oh, 2009. Oh, it's probably easier. And much cheaper.
Slightly, but we were still in the recession and stuff like that.
Yeah. But the Flintstones are always in a recession, you know. They don't really have an actual economy.
Yeah. Oh, did you also hear that crazy theory everyone online has made where it's like the Flintstones aren't cavemen, they're the poor people that live all the way in the ground, and the Jetsons are all the way high up in their flying city and stuff
that would
like
make
that?
so much sense of why the crossover happens, because in my head it could be, the Jetsons just time traveled into the past, or Fred.
That is what happened.
And they just meet the Flintstones, which is and it's interesting. It's funny, especially having your Hanna-Barbera universe crossover, have interesting character dynamics. Oh, a caveman meets a man from the future. It sees all their new futuristic technology, the flying car, the floating treadmills. Which, by the way, why did Justice have floating treadmills above a 1,000,000-meter drop into the abyss?
Oh, I don't know.
They're like, man, you might either have some jet shoes or a parachute like attached to your belt.
It's a good thing George always just gets stuck on the treadmill when like Astro like chases the cat or whatever.
Maybe he has gravity boots.
That's probably it, because I do remember gravity boots being in the show. And stuff.
Fair enough. Maybe that's why they have so much trust, or he just takes one. But he can lift them so easily. I'm not even gonna question it. It's like it's the why conundrum.
Oh, also to bring it back, you remember the Family Guy bit with George, where like after that happens, he goes into the house. He goes like,
"For 45 minutes, I was out there screaming. I know that because my damn watch is broken."
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jane is sorry. I could have been killed.
Oh, you just gotta start screaming Wilma instead, and she'll open that door really fast, I bet.
Oh, yeah.
Who's Wilma? I do enjoy that theory. It's a very dark but also fun fan theory about how the Flintstones actually, all their technology has just basically been wiped. They're only left with stones and dinosaurs, and the Jetsons are just living it up above them in the sky clouds. Man, that's awful.
Or like the creepypasta cartoon theories are insane. Like the one where Angelica has imagined all the Rugrats as like she's schizophrenic, and she imagines all the Rugrats as like dying in childbirth or something.
If you're looking for dark like fan theories, there people are gonna have them. There's always gonna be people with the dark thoughts.
Yeah.
Which
or Ed and Eddie live in purgatory. That's why there are no humans and stuff like that.
Oh, that's why
adults.
there's no adults around. It's just a fun Very Odd Parents episode where Timmy wished all the adults away.
Oh yeah.
Maybe they had fairies in Ed and Eddie. Who knows? Maybe Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network did a crossover.
As a kid, you remember CN City, where it's like the commercials were like they were in a CGI city, all the characters together.
Oh yes,
like
I vaguely remember that. There's a lot of crossovers. Well, there's one where Raven was interacting with Mandy.
Yeah, and that was a funny one where she just goes. They're just sitting together on the subway quietly, and then when Mandy leaves, she goes like,
Nice chatting with you. Whatever.
Actually, as a kid, I always thought, like, what if there's also, like, a Disney... Next door, there's a Disney Channel city, and then next door to that is a Nickelodeon city and stuff like that.
Okay, well, which city would you prefer to live in?
I don't... Like, probably Cartoon Network City.
Well, obviously. Like, look at the podcast. So this is all we're going to talk about. I mean, we're going to bring up other shows.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Especially when we get to Flapjack, because, like, Flapjack, for the next 10 years, basically made shows at Cartoon Network and Disney and stuff like that.
Flapjack was definitely ahead of its time. Because if Flapjack aired today, people would be eating that up. That grotesque, hilarious like comedy. The body horror with the candy wife. I'll never forget the candy wife from Flapjack. That especially whenever we switched to like a realistic or like 3D version of her. Yeah. That was whew. You know, Peppermint. What was the name?
Peppermint Larry.
Peppermint Larry. I was gonna call him Peppermint Butler, but I'm like, wait, no, that's Adventure Time.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, wrong one, wrong era. With all that in mind, yeah, I'm interested. So if we took Cartoon Network off the board, like Cartoon Network City, like, actually, instead, let's do Cartoon Network City. We both live there. But we can only choose one like group to live with. So we'd have to pick like the regular show era, Adventure Time. These are just the people we're interacting with. We're not going to be actually in their world. We're just picking which group are we hanging out with.
You know, regular show wouldn't be too bad. You know.
You say that until you start hanging out with Rigby.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, I say Rigby, but just hanging out with the entire park in general is like you'd probably be the one that dies at the end of the episode.
Yeah, you're right. Like the one guy in the one episode goes like, "Hey, Muscle Man, I got fired. Can I crash here?" And then like the destroyer of all words or whatever. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of death in regular show.
Especially that last season, where they went in space. Like the body count in there was like insane. Just like the last few episodes.
For a Cartoon Network show, I get it. Regular show was supposed to be more of an Adult Swim. But the amount of death that they actually had on screen is like, yeah, it was supposed to be funny and comedic at the end of the day. But man, they killed a lot of people in regular show.
They killed a lot of people.
But okay, so if we're not doing regular show, Which group are we hanging out with? Because I like the idea of hanging out with them, but too risky unless I get some main character powers.
Well, everything else would lead to disaster eventually. Like if you hang out with Dexter, there'd be
hanging out. I'd probably hang out with Dexter. At least I'm not dying there. Probably get some cool gadgets.
Yeah, but Powerpuff Girls, they'd save the day every day.
They save the day, but here's the thing: I don't really want to hang out with. How old are they? 3.
They're 5.
They're 5. I'm sorry. I don't want to hang out with 5-year-olds. I love the Powerpuff Girls growing up, but I don't.
Well, then regular show makes the most sense because I think they're the only ones that are like grown adults.
I mean, we still got Ben 10. We got still have people at Ben 10,
true.
especially like Ultimate Alien Omniverse. He's in high school. I'll hang out with the high school Ben. Grandpa Max would be cool to hang out
that's
with.
true.
Who else do we have? Some other interesting Cartoon Network characters that we can. I feel like Teen Titans cast would be. We see them hang out. They're out here chilling in the park, throwing frisbees, bro, having barbecues. Shit, I know. Cyborg can make a fantastic BBQ, ribs, steak. He's the one who you invite to the cookout, and ask him to cook because he's the best cook. Also, he got the mother box, so he already knows the best method on how to cook food.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Teen Titans would definitely be up there. Okay. What about you? I know there's. I know you want to pick somebody funny that you want to hang out with.
Yeah, like I don't know. Definitely not Foster's because then you have to hang out with Blue all day.
You don't have to hang out with Blue, but at the same time, it's kind of. If you're just hanging out with the imaginary friends,
that'd be fun.
Will would be cool.
Oh, Will's awesome.
Yeah, Will's great. Coco's pretty cool. It's like you can see what random thing you get.
Yeah. Thoughts on Eduardo?
I like Eduardo. It's like he's just your big scary guy.
Yeah.
I never found him really annoying. Like he could have helped more, obviously, because he was the muscle of the.
I noticed from what I also remember, like we're getting way off topic, but whatever. This is our podcast.
It's just how it is.
Anyway, like
it's the life of all podcasts.
I noticed like throughout the show, Eduardo more and more shows his hatred for Blue. And stuff like that.
Well, yeah, because Blue's a horrible creature. He's like they're not even human, but like Blue's not even considered a person by rights. Because they're all imaginary. They're all imaginary friends. They're not actual people. Will is probably the closest thing to a person, alongside the Master Harriman.
Mr. Harriman.
Mr. Harriman.
Yeah. He's the administrator.
But yeah, Blue is such a little shit. Holy crap! I think. Okay, if I had to pick who's probably a worse person in between Rigby and Blue, I have to go with Blue because his character arcs, at least Rigby grows eventually.
Yeah. To be fair, Blue had to cut additional episodes where even he realized.
He's like, man, maybe I shouldn't have gotten that guy deported. Man, maybe I should. It's like, because I remember Bendy as a kid, that little yellow monster who was gaslighting Blue hardcore, out here blaming him from everything and pretending to be innocent, and I hated Bendy. But now that I've gone back and see how awful Blue has been to every person in Foster's, I'm now thinking damn, was Bendy our reward to finally see Blue suffer? Was Bendy actually a reward and we just weren't able to see it?
There's a lot of episodes where they also punish Blue. I remember the one where Frankie won the election or whatever, and she just makes Blue basically work as a maid and have him sit in the corner with the dunce cap and everything when she wins.
Yeah, but that's not as good as just gaslighting him and to everybody hating him about how much of a horrible person. Blue, if you don't stop writing on the walls and leaving your cheese everywhere, you will be sent away. No, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. It was Bendy. Bendy's innocent. And I was too harsh on Bendy.
Yeah.
He was evil, but man, he was a necessary
I think the most evil thing was also blaming Wilt and Coco and Eduardo too.
Oh, absolutely. That's when he went. That's when he went too far. If he was just doing it to Blue, great. But the fact that he included other people's that's the messed up part.
Actually, funny thing, to bring it back to Flintstones in a way, do you remember all the Flintstones cameos in the other shows and stuff like that? Because definitely. I remember a lot in the early Cartoon Network shows. I remember he randomly showed up walking on the street seeing Dexter with a beard in one episode. There was one episode where in Johnny Bravo where it was basically just a Johnny Bravo Flintstones crossover where like Johnny's caveman ancestor.
Johnny kind of did a lot of crossovers.
He did. Scooby-Doo, especially towards the end, there was like also one with Space Ghost, one of his villains, and then like Huckleberry Hound just randomly shows up at the end of the last episode.
Johnny Bravo is also a Hanna-Barbera cartoon, correct?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, it's confirming.
We'll get more into that later. And then, like, also, do you remember the Billy and Mandy episode where Fred showed up?
I do not. I don't really remember Fred like appearing in most. Because obviously I was watching a kid. I was watching episodic, so I wasn't watching it from beginning to end.
Right.
So if there was ever like a niche episode that was kind of a special, I'm sure Cartoon Network didn't really air specials like that very often.
The funny thing,
crossovers.
Fred, they just premiered it like a regular episode. Like, hey, here's a new episode of Billy and Mandy, and like out of nowhere, Fred shows up in like this iceberg or whatever. Billy melts him, and he makes him his pet caveman and stuff like that. It was a weird.
Wait,
episode.
that was Fred?
That was Fred.
Oh, maybe I was just a dumb kid. I just didn't recognize it was Fred, or maybe it was just a different style. I just couldn't figure it out.
Because he wasn't talking in full sentences. All he was saying was like "yabba dabba," and stuff like that.
Maybe just little me was just too dumb to catch on. Well, since we're on that, so comparing Flintstones with the crossovers of the modern day, or the more modern day during that time, how do you say Flintstones just holds up now?
I'd say like. I'm not going to say that Flintstones is, like, the best, like, show from the 60s, cartoon-wise. I think, like, even, like, not even a Hanna-Barbera show, like, maybe, like, Rocky and Bullwinkle still holds up more humor-wise, because, like, we'll get to them eventually, but, like, joke a minute, all funny. Lots of satire, surprisingly, for a Saturday morning cartoon at the time.
Yeah, and I don't think like humor and comedy is the Flintstones' bread and butter anyway.
But it's still entertaining.
Yeah.
It's like looking back. It's like going to like those old fashioned 50s style diners or whatever, where it's like, you're not actually going back to the 50s, but like you're going there for like an experience. Have the waitresses on the roller skates, They serve you the burgers, and like they got all the jukeboxes and stuff like that. It's like it takes you back to a simpler time in a way.
Okay.
I mean, the '60s weren't as simple as a time as people like to make it.
Yeah, they still had their issues. They still had their public messages and things that were happening during the time. The good old fashioned like Cold War drills that they still had.
Yeah. And the civil rights.
Civil rights. There's still quite a bit of stuff going on. So let me ask you, if you were to rate the Flintstones in terms of quality, how do you think it would, during that time? I'm going to ask you twice. So during the 60s, when it was airing, what do you think the rating you would give it if you were growing up?
I'd honestly even now, I'd still give it like a 7 out of 10. It's like entertaining. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is the type of show where it's like, to me, it's like, sometimes like, you don't want to watch like the big old or big epic show that's airing right now. You don't want to watch, like a modern show. Sometimes you want to I wonder what's on MeTV, because like just like something to like help ease the pain a bit.
Would you say that as an adult or as a kid?
As a kid, I just liked it. I just liked the Flintstones as a kid. Like
What would Kid Eddie rate it?
Well, Kid Eddie probably 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Okay.
Everything was 10 out of 10 for me back then, but I still enjoy the show. And like I forgot to mention this, the love for the Flintstones runs deep in my family. My aunt, she loves the Flintstones.
Oh, same thing with my grandmother. Her nickname's actually Dino. Flintstones was a very big part of what we watched growing up. Like whenever Flintstones was on, we were watching it. So I have a nostalgic connection with it. I kind of realize how spoiled I've been in recent years when it comes to animation. Like all these high quality animations of the modern day. And then you go back and then you see Looney Tunes is different, where its expression and its clean lines. The animation was still very, very well done, even if it's looking old or compared to the 40s, the 30s, and the 60s. Whereas the Flintstones, unfortunately, is one of those shows where the animation definitely does not hold up, especially compared to today. Yeah. Even as a non-animator, you can tell this is a very lower budget, but I have always given it the pass because it wasn't a 8-minute or a full-length film where you can invest all this time into. It is 20 minutes episodic where they're doing it week by week basis, where they have to do the screenwrite. They have to come up with the idea, do the hand-drawn animations, and complete it all within about a week or two.
Yeah.
Which is really difficult, especially during that time, and to make it 20 minutes. 20 minutes of animation is hard.
Yeah.
5 minutes is extremely difficult. 22 minutes, well, you have to do backgrounds, you have to do character motion, you have to create different scenarios, different scenes, still be clever with your idea, and having to hand draw all this stuff constantly, and the characters doing different and unique things every time with slapstick. It is hard. As a non-animator, I know it's hard. For an actual animator, I know it's a nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
I believe it's a nightmare.
Yeah. Well, I will say, the cost effectiveness did kind of influence later Cartoon Network. Like, definitely Dexter and Powerpuff Girls. Like, obviously more fluid and stuff like that. But the creators were definitely inspired by the designs. And it's like how you could sort of streamline the process a little bit. And I think it worked more then, because, like, they had more animation to back it up and make it look more dynamic and stuff like that and look better. But I also think, like, you know, there's still something you can learn from back then, you know?
Absolutely.
I still enjoy the style of the show, where it's, like, the thick lines, the character designs, and the backgrounds and stuff like that.
The character in the world is definitely the most interesting part of the Flintstones, besides the character stories and what they're going through.
Right.
With that in mind, Flintstones today, for me, as a kid, I would have rated it much like you, 8 out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10, because little me was also, he was just entertained. He was kind of easily entertained too.
Yeah.
Today, now watching it, at least for the first season especially, I would give it closer to I'd unfortunately give it closer to a 6 out of 10, simply because the animation quality kind of throws you out, whereas I was not laughing very often, unfortunately.
Right.
A lot of times they were relying on the slapstick of, you know, Fred just hitting Barney, or, like, you know, them getting hurt in some way, which it was funny from time to time.
Yeah.
And, you know, the same jokes were hit or miss, whether they were calling Fred fat, Barney slow, or him screaming Wilma. It's not redundant, but some of the jokes do crop up more than I would personally like. So today, I would definitely give it more of a 6 out of 10. There was a lot of episodes where felt like it was just droning on. It was, can we start wrapping it up?
Yeah. But I will say, still very influential. And like I said, not just of Cartoon Network, but also for adult animation in general.
Absolutely.
Because the jokes have been made.
Yes.
You know, like in the Family Guy Simpsons crossover, at the end, Fred's the judge, and he goes like, well, you know, the whole joke of that crossover is like the beers represent the show or whatever. And then Fred's like, well, technically speaking, my beer was the first one and stuff like that.
Which is true.
Yeah.
Simply based on timeline.
Yeah, and it's like, and yeah, the Flintstones was like the most prominent primetime animated series until The Simpsons came in.
Yeah,
and then like
took over everything.
Simpsons took over, and then afterwards comes South Park, Family Guy, American Dad, all these other shows, and Adult Swim too, and stuff like that. And yeah, it's something you kind of take for granted in a way.
Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of people today will probably not consider Flintstones even a part of adult animation, let alone family, like not even family animation. Those say, "Oh, that old kids show from back in the day," which I do think it deserves a little bit more respect, even if I don't think it's holding up as well as it could have. Yeah. Simply because of the level of animation. Also, unfortunately, in the era that we live in, I don't think we can relate to as many of the jokes as of back then, which is a big thing.
Yeah, like one episode, just out of impulse, Fred and Barney decide to start a business, like buy a restaurant and stuff like that. Boy, that'd be nice to do nowadays, but
I mean, how they made the money to try to buy the bar was they went to the racetrack.
Yeah.
They put $50 down and got $2,000 back once their horse won, or their dinosaur, my mistake. With all that in mind, some of it is still relevant to today. Like you obviously, some stuff still does cross over, but a lot of it, I truly believe, is a product of its time.
Yep.
And if you're not familiar with that time, at least at more of a personal level, or hell, just if you're over the age of 30 with like a pre-established like life, business, wife, kids, etc., a lot of the jokes will probably not resonate with you or not really be as funny because you can't really relate to it.
Yeah, and that is sort of why, like, I say all these things about adult animation, but over time the show, once they introduce Pebbles and Bam Bam, it does become like even more like oriented for kids. They have more fantastical adventures and stuff like that. The Great Gazoo in the last season and stuff like that, if you remember him.
I remember the little green Martian that with the big helmet.
Yeah,
I hated it.
yeah. Well, let me ask you, Gazoo or Scrappy?
Of who I hated more?
Yeah, or if you even hate one or the other.
Okay, so the Great Gazoo, from what little me remembers, the Great Gazoo he existed, but he was annoying. I don't remember what about him was annoying. I just remember whenever he showed up, I was like, oh my god, this guy's back again. And little me, he was easily entertained. He didn't really care. He's like, oh, if you're funny, you're funny. But man, there's something about him that just ticked little me off. Scrappy, I know people hate Scrappy, but Scrappy was always fun. I liked his voice. I liked his little cocky attitude. He's like, let me at him, and then and Scooby has to pull him away, like protect him. Yeah, he was annoying, and I can understand. Maybe if I watch him today, once we get to Scooby Doo, I'll find him more annoying, a little more difficult to deal with. But from what I can remember, I think I like Scrappy more.
Okay, all right. Well, I think. Well, we should be wrapping up a little bit soon. Any last thoughts on the Flintstones in general?
Flintstones for me it's a classic. It's an animation classic. I think, especially our parents in the older generation will definitely greatly appreciate what the Flintstones was. And for early entertainment, there wasn't a whole lot. From what I can remember, at least when it comes to more serialized version, because most of it's going to be movies and really shorts or like commercials. Right. That's where most of the animation budget went to. So Flintstones, isn't it one of the earliest like serialized shows?
Animated shows? Yes. And like, I know we spent this whole time talking about how bad the animation was. Thing is, Hanna-Barbera was still probably the best TV studio at the time.
I can agree with that.
Because like, even later on, Filmation or like other stuff and stuff like that, there's still, even then, Hanna-Barbera still probably has a little more fluidity and like maybe just a little more inspiration in like the designs and like how things looked.
The world was definitely still the most unique part about it, and even if it doesn't make sense from time to time, which obviously it's not always supposed to, it's a cartoon. It's a cartoon for family. It's about the jokes. If the jokes work, if you laugh at the jokes, then that was the point of it. It wasn't supposed to be this really well thought out crafted universe. Is they thought a mammoth being a vacuum cleaner was funny, and if you laughed, that's the reason why it's there.
Yep.
And that's why I do think Flintstones holds up extremely well for then. Today, really cool universe. Still good episodes to see. I really appreciate the engagement ring. I think that's my favorite episode. So if any of you guys would like to watch it, I would greatly recommend it. Very wholesome. Very nice to see all the characters being showing great support and love for each other. And really funny jokes in that one.
Yeah.
What about you, Eddie? Any last thoughts you like before we say goodbye?
Basically, same thing. It's an institution. I will say this, and like, especially when you compare things to now and then, like it definitely still was a show that stood out more back then. But I still very much appreciate it for what it was, for what it was trying to do at first, and like it's still iconic to this day, at least to like animation fans and. I don't know. Kids still eat Fruity Pebbles.
Oh,
They still take the vitamins.
If I ate cereal, I still would. I'd still be having Fruity Pebbles all the time.
There's going to be a new movie coming out, an animated movie coming out soon.
They're making a Flintstones movie?
Yeah.
Oh, I have heard nothing about that. Oh, okay. Well, that's something we're going to be talking about definitely when it comes out.
Yeah. Maybe it'll update for a modern era. Who knows?
That would be very interesting to see.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is Eddie, and this is Dio coming at you live from Screwy Ain't It podcast and telling all you lovely viewers good night. Eddie, want to do any shout-outs?
Oh, yes. Please support us. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Threads. Please support us on Patreon. Or listen to the podcast. Share it. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. Share it with your friends, your family, your enemies out of spite. And, just spread the word around. Leave a comment on Spotify or on YouTube. We'd love it if we get any exposure or any support and stuff like that. But thank you to everybody who listened to the podcast already. We really love you.
All right, thank you all, and have a wonderful night.
Bye.